Hey, this is Steve Halleck of TickTocking. As always, you can find me at Steve Halleck on Instagram and at TickTocking.com. And today I have a really cool piece to share. This is the Greubel Forsey Signature 1, and it's the limited edition piece with a steel case and this beautiful blue dial. So let's dig straight into this here. The Signature 1 is actually meant to be the first of a new series of signature watches, and the idea with this series is to give the opportunity for the top Greubel watchmakers to kind of design what they think would be the ultimate watch, given Greubel's resources and abilities. And in this case, in each case, the watchmaker gets credit for the watch in addition to Stephen and Robert. So in this case, you have Didier Cretin, who came up with this, and this is the Signature 1, obviously assuming that later there will be a Signature 2, 3, 4, whatever. And so what he's come up with is actually a simple, time-only, three-hand watch. And so in effect, this is an exercise in kind of how to make the best possible time-only watch. And so it really competes with sort of a Philippe Dufour Simplicity or a Roger Smith Series 2 or these kinds of things, and is a new type of product for Greubel Forsey, who has traditionally focused on tourbillons and then maybe these sort of differential gearing type of things like in the Balancier. But it makes for a really, really interesting watch, and there's a couple very cool things about it. So let's just dig into it. The first thing you'll notice is that although it is very simple, it doesn't look particularly simple. It's certainly not a plain watch or a boring watch. You've got a lot going on the dial side here. The first thing is probably this giant black polished bridge, reminiscent of the Invention Piece 1 bridge. So see my review on that. This is a little bit smaller, but still really, really impressive, and takes up a good, more than probably a third of the dial. And underneath it is this very, very large, interestingly shaped balance wheel, which was created by Greubel Forsey just for this piece. So next to that, you have this floating running seconds dial, which is pretty cool how it is mounted. And you get a lot of depth in this piece, considering it's actually not a very thick watch, which is a neat trick to pull off. Because then next to that, one step higher on the dial, you've got, the dial itself. In this case, for this version, there were 11 pieces done in a steel case with this beautiful blue dial, and I really love this dial. It's two different types of blue. The outer rim is this kind of chrome blue, kind of reminiscent of the Journe Chronomètre blue in the way that it goes kind of black or then picks up full mirroring. And then in the middle is a kind of matte grained, cool blue. Now the blue I think works particularly well in this watch because you've got these big blued steel screws as well. And so it makes for a really cohesive design here. I don't know if you can tell, but the seconds hand is also blued. It's a bit small, but maybe if I catch the light right. Okay, good. Now the hands themselves are really, really, really beautifully made, very expertly polished and manufactured, and they are just a high polish. So it's actually very legible watch as long as there's some light. There's no luminescent material in any of the numerals or the hands or anything like that. So at night, all bets are off. But as long as you've got decent light, this is a very practical watch to read and wear. And they've put the dial on the right side of the dial so that you can, if it's on your wrist and you have your shirt cuff out, then you've got your time still. So the other thing that you'll notice is there's a really interesting and obviously for Greubel expertly well done mix of finishes in this watch. You've got, as I said, this kind of chromed blue, the matte blue, the high polished hands, the black polished bridge, these incredibly perfect Geneva stripes on this plate, the anthracite kind of graining on these two steps, and then you can see here the bevels in between. Check out kind of the polish there on each step. And everything is just spectacularly perfect, making this, you know, really a strong contender for those real purists who love these kind of perfect watches. Let's go to the back quickly. The back is quite cool. You've got, again, these grained, in this case, silver on top of anthracite bridges. You've got the entire wheel train visible here. So it goes from barrel down here. You can see that's the running seconds that goes straight up through that post and to that hand there. And there's a couple other cool things. So the barrel itself is mounted on this 3-prong bridge here that is really, really, really beautifully black polished. And that's a big, wide part to get a black polish that good on. Also, these teeth in the barrel are just perfect. That's gonna be hard to capture without a good macro lens, but everything here is hand done and spectacularly done. One really cool thing you'll see here is there's a cut into that leg of the bridge there. And that's actually a new click that they've developed for this barrel. So let me show you what happens when you wind it. Keep an eye on that click. It's quite cool. And I have to say, this is the single smoothest winding manual wind watch I've ever felt. It's unbelievably buttery to wind, and just, you know, you can immediately feel that the winding feel was paid attention to. This did not happen by accident. You know, I just noticed, actually, check out here, if you can see through right there, you can see the bottom of that blue dial shining through. You see that? Pretty cool. And there's actually a decent amount of visible space through this movement. It's pretty well skeletonized. Well, it's totally open there by those wheels. So the dial here, this blue dial, covers some of it. And then this whole thing is just open to the front crystal, which is pretty cool and allows it to have this very sort of airy feel and really three-dimensional look to it. And again, three-dimensional is nothing new for Greubel, but this is a brand new case size for them. And it's a very modestly sized watch. And so to be able to retain their kind of signature three-dimensional look while having this very kind of classically shaped case is pretty cool. Now, the case itself is steel in this version and is really expertly finished. You can see this kind of graining here is just perfection, and the polish is awesome. Obviously what you would expect from Greubel. But the thing that you might not expect is just how amazingly well this watch wears on the wrist. So let me strap it on. I have to say, this is really one of the most comfortable and most well-proportioned watches I've ever had the pleasure of putting on. Now, of course, this varies depending on the size and shape of your wrist, but for my wrist, this might be like the perfectly sized and shaped watch. It's 41.4 millimeters, and the lugs are quite short, so it just sits really well, and it's not very tall, but you know, it does give enough height to get that three-dimensional look. But it is just really stunning on the wrist, really wearable. You get a lot of movement from this balance in the way that it's created and just the size that it takes up. And even though it's not a tourbillon, you still have, you know, obviously a lot going on visually. The coloring is just awesome. And then of course, with the quality of the finish and the contrasting different kinds of finishes, that's really what you get out of a Greubel that you don't get anywhere else, basically. I'll just let you guys see how it plays with the light. So that's the Greubel Forsey Signature 1 limited edition in steel and blue dial. This should be at the very, 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 very top of almost anybody's dream watch list. And I'm glad that I have been able to share it with you. Thanks.